Hi y'all, Jeff back here with Jeff's Cars. And welcome back for kind of another statistical kind of video. So recently I did 1970s to 1990s cars that you kind of should stay away from. Well, let's go back to the 1960s. Now, some cars from the 1960s, and there's a lot of cars that are being collected in that time period. But if you want cars that are an investment, uh, then these cars are probably ones you should stay away from. And I'm only going to cover the top nine. Number nine. Um, Probably ought to stay away from the 1961 to 1963 Oldsmobile F85 turbo with a 3.5 liter V8 engine. Um, or I guess it's the F85 Jetfire. Um, Probably because of the lack of reliability. Now, as a collector, and you put it back together, that car probably be fine as a resto mod, maybe with an LS swap or something of that nature. But in its original state, probably one to stay away from. Number 8, 1963 to 1964 Studebaker Avanti. Um, One of the quotes I saw was, "It's one of the most audacious cars ever produced." Just over 4,600 of them were produced, but Studebaker was struggling at that time, so they became, a car that, Studebaker always had different unique looks. I mean, they didn't follow the mainstream, and that's probably what drove them, out of business. The next car on the list, number 7, 1962 to 1964 Buick Wildcat. Now, this was Buick's first ever performance car, but it didn't quite hit the market as well as its counterpart, the GTO and the Impala SS. But the Buick Wildcat kind of had the look, but just didn't have the performance. So another one to probably, you might be able to get them cheap, but are they going to ever be worth a lot more money? Who knows? Next one, number 6, I'm not shocked. The 1963 to 64 Ford Falcon Futura Sport. Now, while it had a pretty good sized V8 engine in it, a 4.8 liter, which would have been the 289, it only had 164 horsepower, and obviously they used that engine later on in the 64 Mustang, which became a better hit. But they must have re-engineered the engine, because the Mustang, while it wasn't a fast car, it had the look, and the Ford Falcon just really didn't have it. And it never sold well with Ford. And then its counterpart, the Mercury Comet Cyclone, not a very, everybody says it's, and this is number 5, by the way, not very appealing to look at. The 65 to 67 went on to be a decent muscle car, but the early years just didn't get it done. Number 4 on the list, 65 to 68 Plymouth Fury 3. Now, this was a comfortable car, but the two engines offered, the 3.7 liter 6-cylinder and the 5.2 liter V8, which is the 318, both were underpowered and lacked any kind of performance. So in reality, it wasn't a performance car. It was more of a family car, but somewhat stylish, but it just didn't hit the buyers just weren't liking it as well. Number 3, no surprise to me, the 1966 AMC Rebel, available with two engines, a 4.7 V8 producing 200 horsepower, which had a fair amount of power, but couldn't match the other muscle cars at that time. and then of course AMC, they were boxy, they had a unique look. Again, you get into later 60s and the AMC Hornet and then later on the Matador and the Ambassador, and those cars, they're just big clunky cars, but just not one worth investing in. Number two, 1967 Buick Grand Sport 340. Now, it wasn't the best looking muscle cars of the time, but the 340 cubic inch 5.6 liter engine produced 260 horsepower, but again, wasn't as powerful as its counterparts. And we're talking 67, so you're looking at, first year Camaro, you're talking Chevelle, GTO, those cars, again, they had already kind of established, well, other than the Camaro, they had already established themselves. And so the Buick Grand Sport just wasn't one to keep up with. Number one on the list. And this one, my parents owned a 67 of this, but a 68 Pontiac Tempest. Now, Pontiac created the first muscle car with the GTO, but kind of slipped when it got to the 67, 68 with the Tempest. Now, was it really a muscle car? I don't think so. I don't think it was as ugly as some of the people talked about, but it didn't have, a lot of power. But was it really a muscle car? So this one I kind of disagree with a little bit, because it has kind of that look, but just it was more of a family sedan. The large engine in 68, the 6.6 liter V8, did produce 340 horsepower, just didn't produce the power like the other muscle cars of the era. So that one I kind of disagree with, but these are from the sources that I found out on the internet. Now, on the positive side, the 1960s cars that could be good investments. Now, we already know some of the cars, because you get into the late 60s, a lot of people are collecting things. Like, for example, one of them on the list, Ford Mustang. 67 to 69 Mustangs, big collector, big collectors are buying those and resto-modding them and restoring them, and I've seen them go through the Minkin auctions and the Barrett-Jackson auctions and things like that. So those are those are ones that are worth investing in. Chevy Corvette and the Stingray, so we're talking pretty much all the way through the 60s. The Stingray came out obviously later, but the Corvette and the Stingray, great cars to invest in. Parts are still available and so on and so forth, but it's going to cost you up front to get the car, but the rewards are probably good on the back end. The next car, and I would love to have one, is the Jaguar E-Type. 1961 has been noted and called the most beautiful car made. I'm going to agree. Now, was it a performance car? Yes, it was designed after the racing cars and things like that. So it is a wonderful looking car. You don't see a lot of them, out there in the auction and the marketplace. So, if you ever get your hands on one, you better hang on to it. The next, Ford Thunderbird. Now, Ford Thunderbird, we know the 57. Some of the collectability on the 57 to 59s have kind of slipped off a little bit. And I have seen out on Marketplace and various different sites, auction sites and things like that, Bring a Trailer and even Craigslist. The Ford Thunderbird in the mid-60s are becoming more popular, although the barn and field find ones, you're going to have to deal with a lot of rust, floorboard rust, trunk rust, things like that. In the mid-60s, you've got the the sway away steering wheel, where the steering wheel moves to the side for you to get out. Those are things that it's unique, and newer collectors are starting to get involved in it. And besides, there are a lot of sheet metal, and they're heavy too. And then the last two on the list, the Porsche 911, for obvious reasons, and the Ferrari 250 GTO. Those are, part of that list. Now, there's a couple cars on here that are probably, that are good investments, that have been on the, been in the collector's area. And obviously I'm going to mention a Mercedes. We're talking the Pagoda. The 230 SL, 280 SL, in the chassis just before the R107. So those cars, if you get a hold of them, you're going to pay a premium. A lot of them are bringing $35,000 to $50,000, and so those are continuing to go up in value, only simply because there weren't that many in the United States, and that's where it seems to be. That's where it seems to be a lot of collectors are at. So that's one, if you can get your hands on. It'd be great to have, but you're going to spend some money getting it. So, folks, there you have it. That's the 60s version of the cars. I'll continue to come up with some more content and videos, and I have another video coming out that'll probably come out pretty soon regarding some of the mechanics views of some of the cars that they shudder when cars arrive into their shops. So keep watching. If you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe. Share this with your friends if this is topics that they're interested in. I'm getting close to getting my channel monetized, so I can actually do more. So please help me with some ideas on content. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.